Demons had destroyed countless divine spirits and pushed the human world to the brink of ruin. In response, humans formed pacts with divine spirits, becoming hunters to combat the threat. Makoto asked her, puzzled, if she was not a divine spirit but a demon, clenching her arms tightly, concern evident in her expression. Makoto pressed her, saying he needed more details, but before she could answer, the boss's room door creaked open, and voices filled the air as someone remarked that Makoto must have been defeated by now. Makoto told her team with certainty that Makoto was likely inside the boss's stomach by this point, but they all froze, surprised and confused, when they saw him standing there. Makoto furiously called out to them, demanding answers, while Kamiya stared in disbelief, asking how he was still alive, and Maito questioned him about the boss's whereabouts. Hino then shouted, realizing that Makoto must have formed a pact. Kamiya, suddenly worried, asked Hino what they should do. Hino cursed, knowing that if Makoto reported what had happened, they'd be in serious trouble. The three hunters activated their divine powers, aiming them at Makoto, as Hino shouted that they had no choice but to eliminate him. Stunned, Makoto shouted back, asking the woman's name. Caught off guard, she stammered as she introduced herself as Rinoa. With resolve, Makoto told her that was enough for now and requested her power once more. Rinoa, stunned by his determination, agreed. Summoning his shadow weapon, Makoto formed a sword. Hino, attempting to rally his team, dismissed Makoto as a weakling and urged them to finish him quickly. Just then, Hino's divine spirit, Flam, interrupted, asking if Hino truly planned to fight that thing. Surprised, Hino asked Flam if it was scared, but Flam warned him, calling him a fool for not noticing the abnormality of Makoto's divine spirit. Makoto's divine spirit, trembled, admitting it had never seen anything like it before, while Kamiya's divine spirit, Fall, remarked that Makoto's pact was on a completely different level, leaving Kamiya in disbelief. Hino, now alarmed, asked Flam what kind of spirit Makoto had formed a pact with. Flam explained that it wasn't clear who she was, but she wielded the strength of a top-class divine spirit, shocking everyone. Makoto glanced at Rinoa, realizing what this meant. Divine spirits were classified into ranks, lower, middle, upper, and top class, with only a rare few reaching the highest level of strength. These spirits were known as the strongest among their kind. Curious, Makoto asked Rinoa who she truly was, but she gestured ahead, saying there wasn't time for explanations. Following her gaze, he saw Hino preparing to attack, Flam surrounding him. Hino shouted, refusing to believe he could be weaker than a worthless loser, and reasoning that since Makoto's pact was freshly made, he was still weak, with only the boss as his first real opponent. Maito hesitated, noting that while hunters did grow stronger by defeating demons, there was still uncertainty. Kamiya added that if Makoto had truly formed a pact with a top-class spirit, they wouldn't stand a chance. Hino, furious, called his team cowards and leapt forward, dashing straight at Makoto with Flam surging around his fist. Shouting that he would show Makoto the power of a true hunter, Hino swung his fist, but Makoto waited calmly for the strike to approach before sidestepping it with ease. Hino attacked again, throwing a series of flaming punches, but Makoto dodged each one effortlessly, barely breaking a sweat as he anticipated each move. When Hino's fist came close to his face, accompanied by the skill Flam's spirit breath, Makoto swung his shadow sword forward, slicing cleanly through the flames. The sight left Hino and the others in shock. Makoto taunted Hino, asking if he was holding back, which only fueled Hino's anger. Enraged, Hino shouted at him not to get cocky, calling him a weakling who had only gotten lucky by forming a pact with a powerful spirit. Makoto gritted his teeth, responding that what he had gained wasn't luck, unlike them. He hadn't given up despite how long it had taken him to form a pact. Enraged, Hino cursed and released a powerful burst of flames, shouting that he would burn Makoto to ashes with his secret technique. He urged his team to fight alongside him, reminding them that if they didn't finish Makoto now, they were finished. Trembling, Maito activated her divine power, reluctantly agreeing that they had no choice, while Kamiya, equally fearful, cursed under his breath and joined in. Hino activated Flame Spirit's Roar, Maito activated her Water Spirit's Grand Archer, and Kamiya summoned Thunder Spirit's Great Spear. Together, they unleashed their special skills in unison, causing a massive explosion that shattered the ground and sent up clouds of smoke and debris. As the smoke cleared, Maito asked nervously if they might have gone too far, while Hino laughed triumphantly, declaring that, in the end, trash was still trash. But as the dust settled, their expressions changed to disbelief. Makoto stood there, unmoved and unscathed, calmly explaining that he had cut through all their attacks and that the boss's speed had been far more formidable. He took a step forward, closing the distance, and asked if they were now prepared to face him. Hino froze, fear seizing him as he glimpsed Rinoa's intense gaze within Makoto. Summoning his courage, Hino created a flame and warned Makoto not to mess with him, hurling fireballs his way while calling him a pathetic wannabe hunter. Makoto bent low, dodging each flame as he advanced swiftly toward Hino. As he closed in, Hino, panicked, tried to say something, but Makoto hides his shadow weapon, then launched a punch directly at Hino's stomach, sending him flying back and leaving him coughing up blood. Looking down at him, Makoto stated firmly that he was a hunter. Hino slammed into the ground near his teammates, trembling before he collapsed. Makoto coldly ordered them to take Hino and leave, warning them not to speak a word of what had happened. In a panic, Maito and Kamiya quickly grabbed Hino and fled, fear evident in their eyes. As the dust settled, Makoto's sacred stone glowed, and Rinoa appeared, remarking with a soft smile that she couldn't believe he'd resorted to punching Hino. He replied that cutting him down hadn't been necessary, thanking her for standing by his side in the fight. She smiled warmly at him, and he reminded her that they were in the middle of an important conversation. She nodded in agreement as he asked her to explain how she was not a divine spirit, but, in fact, a demon. With a serious expression, Rinoa clenched her hands tightly and replied that she understood, preparing to tell him the truth. Rinoa explained that she was once a divine spirit of the angel race, but due to a certain event, she fell from grace and became a demon. She looked intently at Makoto, who listened in surprise, reflecting on the significance of her words. He knew that angels were a high-ranking race among divine spirits, but he had never heard of a divine spirit turning into a demon. She went on to explain that the reason she, a demon, could form a pact with him was due to her former status as a divine spirit. However, the reason her sacred stone had ended up with him was a mystery, and everything about their situation felt irregular. Makoto responded that he understood her predicament. Rinoa then admitted that, no matter how hard she tried to conceal it, she could not change the fact that she was a demon. If he wished, she offered to terminate the pact immediately, saying he shouldn't hesitate if he felt uneasy about it. As she said this, she tightly gripped her arm, trembling slightly, which didn't escape his notice. With a sigh, he sat down beside her and introduced himself properly as Makoto Asuka, an 18-year-old hunter. Surprised, she asked why he was introducing himself now. He replied that he knew she wasn't a bad person, so he had no intention of canceling the pact. This left her stunned, but he explained that this was his way of showing he was counting on her from now on. Speechless at first, she then smiled, saying he was a strange person but that if he was fine with it, so was she. He smiled back, stood up, and began to walk out of the dungeon, suggesting that they head back together. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, two demons were observing Makoto and Rinoa from afar. One remarked that, just as expected, the fallen angel had betrayed them. His comrade dismissed the concern, saying that even if the winged insect had turned against them, it made no difference to their plans. With a smirk, the first demon added that he found the whole situation amusing and had thought it would be at least somewhat entertaining. Later, in Tokyo, Makoto arrived at his small apartment and opened the door to room 303. He told Rinoa it was his home and switched on the lights, revealing a modest room with just a bed, a table, and a few boxes. He invited her to sit wherever she liked. She glanced around and sat beside the table, remarking skeptically that it was hard to believe humans actually lived in such places. Makoto asked if something was wrong, to which she replied that it reminded her of the caves in the demon realm, merely a place to keep out the wind and rain. He explained that it was simply a place to sleep and asked if there was anything she particularly liked. She looked puzzled, and he clarified that it could be anything, even an object. After a moment of thought, she replied that she enjoyed beautiful scenery. Noticing her gaze out the window, he suggested that they add some flowers to brighten the view, thinking they might look nice there. She responded warmly, saying he had good taste and that flowers were a lovely idea. Makoto then proposed that they buy a new flower each time they cleared a dungeon, an idea that brought a smile to her face. Yawning, he admitted that he was exhausted from the day's events and thought he'd go to bed early. As he moved toward his bed, Rinoa approached it and asked if it was indeed where he slept. He nodded, saying he was going to change into something more comfortable. She lay down on the bed, commenting that it seemed a bit cramped for two people. Startled, Makoto's face flushed as he asked if she actually planned on sleeping together with him. Rinoa asked if it wasn't customary to sleep together, mentioning that, in the angelic realm, sharing a bed was the norm. Makoto, surprised, asked if divine spirits even needed sleep outside of their sacred stones. She admitted that she didn't think she could, so he suggested she return to the sacred stone to rest. She agreed, retreating to the stone with a quiet goodnight. Makoto looked at his sacred stone for a moment, then lay down on his bed after tidying up. As he settled in, he wondered what he should do from here, considering the risks if people discovered his pact with a demon. He decided he would have to operate solo and resolved to start with an F-rank dungeon, the only level he could reliably clear on his own. The next day, at the Japanese Hunter Association headquarters, Makoto walked inside, his sacred stone concealed within his gloves. He asked Rinoa if she felt any pressure, and she replied that she was fine, agreeing it was wise to keep the purple stone hidden since it would draw attention. He approached the counter to make a request, informing the assistant he'd be taking on an F-rank dungeon. Just then, the room erupted in gasps and murmurs as people noticed a man entering the building, a rare and striking presence. The S-rank hunter Amagi Yugo strolled in, holding a bottle of alcohol and declaring that there was nothing like a drink to wake up. As he took a sip, the crowd shrank back, slightly stunned to see their idol drinking in the middle of the day. Several hunters rushed forward, asking for autographs and photos, while Yugo, amused, noted that things were as lively as usual. But then his gaze landed on Makoto at the counter, and he looked surprised. Makoto recalled that Yugo was an S-rank hunter, wondering if they had just made eye contact. Yugo smiled and approached him, stopping to ask for his name and rank. Unsure, Makoto confirmed that Yugo was indeed speaking to him, and Yugo remarked that it had been a while since he'd spoken to someone who wasn't a girl. Makoto introduced himself as Makoto Asuka, an F-rank hunter. Yugo acknowledged this with a nod, but seemed doubtful, asking if he was really an F-rank. Confused, Makoto asked if Yugo needed anything from him. Yugo replied that he didn't, then turned to the assistant, apologizing for interrupting, and charmingly suggesting they go for tea sometime. As Yugo left, he called over his shoulder that they would see each other again, leaving Makoto wondering if Yugo had just been flirting. The assistant was left flustered, barely able to speak. She marveled at the fact that Yugo had spoken to her, asking if it had all been a dream. Makoto, equally baffled, brought her back to his request, which she processed quickly, still in shock. He left the counter, pondering why someone as famous and powerful as Yugo would approach him. The assistant returned with the coordinates for the gate, thanking him for his patience. He thanked her in return and left, smiling as he resolved to stay focused. This would be his first solo dungeon clear, even if it was only F-rank. Later, he arrived at the dungeon's location and confirmed it was the right place, checking his coordinates one last time before stepping inside. Once within, he noticed the unusually heavy atmosphere of the dungeon. Rinoa's voice echoed in his mind, as she asked if F-rank demons were indeed considered the weakest, to which he replied they were, and he asked if she sensed anything unusual. Suddenly, he heard the rapid approach of something large and, on instinct, activated his shadow weapon skill, forming his shadow sword to block an incoming attack. However, the force was overwhelming, and he was thrown back, though he managed to recover without serious injury. Rinoa checked if he was okay, and he confirmed he was, though shaken, and asked what had hit him, noting its incredible speed. He then recognized the creature, a chaos wolf, and froze, asking if they weren't D-rank demons. Rinoa replied that, at the very least, it was not a bottom-tier demon, suggesting that something was wrong with this dungeon. Makoto began to wonder if he had mistakenly entered a D-rank dungeon. That's all for today, guys. See you on the next upload.